Evening. It is evening time. This is Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I have just actually finished the backing of my quilt that I've been making. You guys are going to get so sick of seeing this quilt. It's taken me forever to make it. But yeah, I started it. I started it in our other house. Yeah, this has been months and months. Usually I can make a quilt in about 3 days. I'm a bit off my game lately, but you guys don't mind. I have finished the backing. The backing was too small. You know my last video, I was all moaning and crying about it, silly me. But I got it, I added some borders to the backing. That's it, now it's massively huge. I have to cut some fabric off. It's either too small or it's too big. It's too big, but better larger and to cut off things than it is to add. So I go through the whole process of what Ian had suggested, that I cut off the sides of this, you know, quite a lot. I can reuse that, what I've cut off. I tell you in the video that I'm going to be actually using that cut off fabric of the blocks of the back that I had, and I'm using that as the binding. It will have quite a lot of seams in it. It's all right, so fine. So that won't go to waste. But before I get to that this little bit of video showing how I did my backing, I just wanted to to bring, not bearer of bad news yet again, me and my news. But it was a little bit sad, realization. Somebody had asked me, who has been following, did I ever find my china? If you're new here, we had moved twice. We had then lost our home, became rather homeless when a tornado hit our last home. Our things from our initial move, from my formal dining room, all of my good china was packed away. It was moved into our other place and in storage. Fast forward 9 months of being displaced and being rather homeless, living in our son's basement. We then got this home, which hopefully was our forever home. And I go to collect all of our things that are in storage units and in garages and are in barns and are in our friend's house and are all over the place. I had a flash the other evening. I can't find my good china. I had 2 patterns of good china, good Royal Albert china that I've had for years, 20, 30 years. My good china, my old country roses, the 12 dinner plates are gone. Now it's a very popular pattern, but we won't be getting it anytime soon. But their other one, enchantment pattern from Royal Albert also is more of a rare pattern, and I'm missing 9 plates and teacups and saucers from that set. That was a set of place setting of 16 that I had. I'm sort of missing half of each pattern. Now I did speak to Jen, and she said, we put that, when we moved from your original home to your last house, which was flooded, we put stuff in the barn. We had a barn and a workshop and an attic space above my sewing room. Well, we went with bated breath into the barn, which had been flooded about 2 foot up the barn. But those containers have been taken out. All of the, like our snow blower and our lawn mowers, they were all ruined. But we did have shelves. Well, I had a feeling that it wasn't there, and sure enough, it wasn't. I did say, last chance, I did say to Maxwell, there was an attic space where like the water heater was up above my sewing area. And I said, oh, so he got a ladder and he went up there, and sure enough, he goes, oh, Mom, china, boxes that are marked china. Well, I was all excited, and then I went up the ladder, and as soon as I saw, I had all this beautiful like Prussian roses china plates and bowls, large, like serving bowls. And when I used to have tea parties, oh, my computer went off. When I used to have tea parties, I would use this beautiful china. I don't really have enough space for it right now. So I looked at it and I'm like, that's not the china. That's not my good china pattern. That's just, you know, beautiful roses, china bowls and things, which I'm very pleased that he found. So perhaps that was what Jen was thinking. I woke up the other night, and I've tried to erase or forget the memories of that September 1st nightmare when Hurricane Ida and the tornadoes and the flood hit our home. It was very traumatic. We had things in the basement that you know, blah blah blah, that we had to get rid of because it was hazardous waste. So the company came along and threw everything into so many things that were an overflow from our large home that were stored in our basement of our smaller home. I remembered with clarity that I had cleaned out the china closet in my original house, and there were where the large plates were, down on the lower shelf. Now all of the other bits of china, we donated a tremendous amount of crystal and china. We gave away, we donated, we gifted so many things. But I do remember doing my plates up, and Ben, my friend Jen's husband, he's a printer, and he would be bringing us, when we moved from our other house, which was 3 years ago, he would be bringing me big boxes already made up that had printing paper in it, white printing paper, heavy cardboard boxes. They were only so big because reams of paper are heavy. They were perfect for storing my china, for wrapping my china up. And I remember those china boxes in a flash the other night, in the middle of the night, that they were in the basement. And I wasn't there. We had to pump 7 foot of water out of the basement from the flash flood. I wasn't there well, I was there actually. I couldn't look because it was very traumatic. I saw the dumpsters. Everything though had to go in the dumpsters. I don't like. I still don't understand. Like, there were some metal things. I had some beautiful, not silver, but some beautiful, like plate holders, like crystal-y plate holders. China, which you could have washed. I don't know. There was papers and books and bedding and all sorts of other things. Tons of bedding, tents, things like that. I get we had to toss. But I thought if there was a team of 7 men tossing in hazmat suits to getting rid of stuff, I would have thought maybe they would have opened a box and seen china. I don't know, but that's, I believe, and it's been gone. So I did have a cry the other day because again, my realization was, I said to Ian, it was in the basement. It was in the basement. Going down the stairs, it was on the right hand side on that shelf, in amongst those bits. Now, and it was I thought it was just I've had it forever, and I have a sign over here, and I'm gonna go get my sign. Hold on. I don't know if you can see this, folks. Get over it. I have to get over it. this thing. Hopefully it's you can see it because it's mirror image here. I had this sign in our old kitchen. And that was sort of my motto. Having so many children, they would come down, mommy, 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 somebody smacked me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, get over it. And as hard as it is, because it was upsetting, I'm having to get over it. I'm having to get over the fact that my china is gone. It's just a thing. I don't, as you know, if you've been following me, you like it when people go, oh, you say you escaped with your lives. You know, that's the most important thing. Well, duh, of course it is. Of course it is. But my china was lovely. And I miss my china. And I miss 3/4 of the things that were ruined in the flood. But anyway, I have to get over it. And I will. So, then was then, now is now. I'm finishing my quilt. And, oh, another thing I did get, so I'm going to finish this quilt whenever. But I did get some of my Ukrainian fabric that I have done a video on. I have a really good idea. And actually, it's not my idea. Because I'm thinking, I don't have a clue what to do with this stuff. But I had seen a quilt video. I thought, oh, I'm going to be clever. A million people have done it already. And they probably will do a better tutorial than I will ever do. But what I'm going to do, it's not an easy thing to do. I'm going to just leave it like that. But I'm going to do it step by step by step because I've never done it. So I'm going to video myself making this not complicated, but it's an interesting quilt using my panels. And it sort of doesn't end up like just a panel with some blocks around it, which I love, because I did get the panels of the Ukrainian women. I'm going to be using that fabric for the one quilt I'm making. I'm doing a couple of them, but that one, it's not an easy thing, I don't think. I will see. I'm going to video myself making it and you can follow along, but that's to come. I'm going to finish my back, or my back is finished. You'll see at the end of this video, my backing is finished. I'm going to go in the next couple of days, I'm going to go down to my kitchen and I'm going to pin baste it, try to get it even. You'll see, because it has borders. But again, I'm just going to wing it and hope for the best. And yeah, so that quilt will then be done. And then I'm going to quilt it on my machine here. I don't know how I'm going to quilt it. I'll see. I'll see what I'm thinking of. But anyway, folks, if you're having a difficult time and you just can't seem to, I think we have to, right? We all have to just get over ourselves and laugh at ourselves. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video, folks. Thank you so very much. I say it at the very end. Thank you so much for following along and being my YouTube friends and family. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. Here's my quilt top that measures almost the exact size of my backing, okay, at this point. I obviously just have to make my backing a little bit larger so I can sandwich them together and then quilt it. So I'll put this over here. This is what I've come up with. I'm going to be using this backing that I've already made out of my 10-inch squares. I'm going to give it some relief by adding a bit of white, because my quilt top has a lot of white in it, and I know the backing doesn't really matter. It's another, it's another look by itself, but I like to add a tiny little bit of lift, a little bit of sparkle to the otherwise not lift and not sparkle backing. I mean, I love the floral, I love this teal, but I think just a little bit of a white border. And then I'm going to be using this fabric. I can just hear some of you going, what? What the heck is that? Well, what I did is this, I purchased, I don't know where I got this actually. It's a fabric purchased that's already like a patchwork. Obviously from a manufacturer, okay? This gingham. I do love gingham. And the fact that I have the gingham, the gingham, I just thought, oh, that's so pretty. I like it. It's obviously not the same fabric. And this is, I must say, this is slightly thin. But all I'm going to be doing is making a nice wide border for this fabric. And the reason I chose it, hopefully you can see, the reason I chose it is my backing. Forget my quilt top, because it's really going to be a completely two-sided reversible quilt. My quilt backing has this yellow, okay? It has a yellow and it has a bit of green right there. It doesn't have the purple in here, but it has this sort of tealy dark blue, which is this navy here, and of course it does have the teal blue. And I just thought, I have a ton of it. That's why I need it, because I actually need to have the length and the width to make my quilt back bigger. Okay, so again, forgetting math, I do know that this is almost the exact size of my quilt top. I have enough of this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to cut my backing off. Hold up. I've just sort of folded it in half and then in half again. And again, using my two ruler method, knowing that this is the exact size of my quilt top, I'm going to wing this now, and I'm going to cut a good 7 inches. I'm going to find my 7-inch line here. Maybe I'll do it, yeah, maybe I'll do it 7 inches. And then I'm going to be adding, well, you'll see, the same distance here to here. This fabric here is not going to be going to waste, because I'm going to do it. There you go. I am going to cut off the other side also. I'm going to save this fabric for my binding. Somebody said, oh, save it for your binding. And I'm like, what a good idea. So that is 7 inches here. That's all lovely and straight like that. 7 inches. Lovely and square on my board. I love this 2 ruler method, as you know. I use a ruler and then my Fiskars rotary cutter ruler. To make this, I'm making it smaller to make larger. That's all. And again, this is my winging it method. Seven inches. As you can see, my quilt top, my quilt backing I should say, has the same amount of fabric around the sides, here, and around the top and the bottom, as you can see there. So it's the exact same size quilt thing. Now I can just start by adding my border. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my white border about 1.5 inch strips. I'm going to attach them just like I would a quilt, sides and then the top. And then this fabric here I'm going to be cutting and using for my binding. And then this binding will be teal blue, teal floral, teal floral. Oh, I think that's pretty. Can you see that? When I go to do it, obviously it'll be a lot thinner than that. Oh, I think it's pretty. So then, that way I won't waste. So I have my inner white border sewn on the sides, the top, and the bottom. And what I've done is I've cut this outside border fabric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks across this gingham stuff. I've trimmed this seam because it's all seamed. It's all seamed. It's like a patchwork seam. Again, fairly thin fabric. The actual seams have been like overlocked, so they're not raw seams from the manufacturer. It's sweet fabric. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try to figure out very, very loosely, I don't really care at this point, where my blocks on each side, because I know these sides are the same size lengthwise, where my blocks are going to end. And then when I actually put the quilt top up here, this fabric up here, again, it may or may not match, and I'm not really bothered about that. I know it will match this way, but maybe this will be half a block. So I think it's about, if I do the whole block there, coming down, not stretching anything, the whole block to the end of my quilt here, it's about a half a block. So I have to go up here. This is how I do it. I have to go up here, and I'm going to start the quilt border here about halfway along. I hope you can see that. That's about halfway. So I'm going to put the right sides of this. This is the pretty side. I'm going to bring this over to the pretty side here, and I'm going to just shift this up about halfway for the block to start, for my seam to start. And again, so I'm sewing the big patchwork outer border to my inner border here. I'm just laying it, and I can see from the manufacturers where this seam was putting these ginghams together, and I trim that off to a little bit. That's a little bit wonky, a little bit 1/4 inch, eighth of an inch, but I can see where that stitching is. So I'm aiming for that stitching because I don't want any of that little seam in my actual seam here to show. So I'm just sort of coming like this, hoping that I'm getting it, and then, because I trimmed it off, but I just sort of cut it willy-nilly. But I think just the purpose is to not have this half a little sliver of seam showing on my inner border. Let me just check it actually. Hopefully am I in the frame there? Yeah. Yeah, it's turned out well. So there you go. As you can see that, oh, this is thin. That's all right. It's okay. It's thin, cheesy fabric, but it's okay. Just for the outside. So as you can see, I have caught that seam real well in this seam. And then my little inner border just ends up, let me just see if I've done it all the way along. Yeah, my inner border ends up about 1 inch, which is what I wanted, just to add a little bit of relief. So yeah. So I'm coming to the bottom of this first row here, this first side, and I am very pleased because it is half. Can you see that? It is half, just like it is at the top. So each side of my quilt border will be half a block. And actually what I will do is I will sort of pattern match. Oops. Let me just put this under here. I will sort of pattern match the rest of this fabric that I have here. Like I'll have down at the bottom here, I'll have this yellow, green, red, blue, and the teal. I will go across and I'll find that sort of pattern match. So your eye just goes across. It really doesn't matter because you're seeing all sorts of patchwork, but to my mind, I'll just have the yellow, half a red block down at the bottom. So here's my first side border, and I'm just going to trim this off. I have it nice and square on my board here, right along, and that seam is nice and square. So I'm just going to put my ruler that way, match it up here, match it up there, match it here. This up top is nice and square, and then again, oops. And as you can see, and I have all this, and I'm very lucky that I've cut this bit I might have to cut another length. I don't know if this is quite enough to go around all three more sides, but as you can see, I have that half a block there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up at the top here, and I'm going to find the pattern match. Just put this here just to hold that there. Am I in the frame there? Yeah, and then come over here. So I'll just find that pattern match. Oh, I do have to cut that off, yes. So I'll just cut this off here. Just make it nice and straight, nice and square. This is the top. Like that. So I have, again, the half a block up here. So on the other side, I'll be sewing this bit to the other side, to the other seam. But I want to find this blue, there it is. So it's the blue, you see that, what I'm going to be doing? So just visually, you probably wouldn't see it at all because it's a big patchwork, but I notice it. So what I want is the blue, the red, the yellow, the green, and the red bit. So, like I say, so I have a starting point on this. So now when I go over to this side of my quilt, put my right sides together. Again, being mindful of this seam. I will trim the seam off just a little bit more so I don't get it in there. Then when this is on, oh, my quilt backing is nice and big, then I have the matching all the way across. And then when it comes, so as you saw, I just cut off the left part of my border of this patchwork to match this, and then I see that the actual squares don't match, color match. They're not a pattern match. And I was trying to figure out, I'm like, I forget it, I don't really care. It's just that I like the fact that this is half a block there. The colors aren't necessarily in order there. I don't know, I'm not going to overthink it, but I do like the fact that the lines of my patchwork across the top of the top or the back of my quilt all line up. Hopefully you can see. So the bottom and the top of my quilt both have half a block. It's worked out perfectly. I just sort of chopped that off at half and then hope that that was the same size, and it is. Now I have to figure out the top of my quilt here. So here's the side of my quilt with my border on it, and I've cut the top. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's that seam that's going to go in here. Now I'm sort of just eyeballing what I have here. And I don't love the two blues together, the two reds together, the two yellows together on that pattern. So I'm just going to shift it over to here. I'm going to start this yellow, even though this is half a block, that's okay. That will be a full block up there, but that's okay. But as you can see, the manufacturers, these seams are just slightly off, or my inner border's taken it off. So what I'm going to do is, you can see that. So that seam matches, that I think that's fairly important to the eye when I go to sew this pretty side to this pretty side. That seam should match, that seam should match. This is just slightly off. That's about 1/4 of an inch, and that's about 3/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do with this piece here, I'm just going to take minuscule little tucks and then press it, just minuscule little tucks in those squares, just a tiny, tiny little tuck on the seam on the back side to make this to make these. I'm going to cut this one off. I'm going to cut that off like that. So my quilt, like that border, is going to start there, and then as you can see, it's just off a little bit, just off a little bit. So on these two, I'm just going to tuck it, just going to tuck it, just stretch this one just slightly so I get these perfectly square like that. You can see. So as you can see, my quilt backing is finished, and if you remember when I had my quilt top hanging on this same sort of quilt shelf here, clamped up, I don't have a design wall, I just clamp it up, my quilt top is a lot smaller. So that was the whole point of this. I made my quilt backing a lot larger. I will have to center my quilt top when I sandwich it. I'm going to be doing that in the next video on my table downstairs. I'll have to center it, the backing. Now, you're sort of working blind when you're working with like a pieced backing, or like this is like almost a two-sided quilt to try to get these nice and straight. You're working blind because this is down, face down on the table, and then you're batting, and then your quilt top face up. So it might, I will try to get the same amount of backing all the way around. So thank you so much for bearing with me. This quilt will get done eventually. And on my next video, I'm going to go down to my kitchen. I have a nice tall kitchen table and show you how I'll base this and try to get it as centered and as even as possible. But that'll be for my next video. Thanks so much, folks, for bearing with me. And I hope you have a lovely day. And as always, love from the Trueloves. See you later. Bye-bye.